everyone. My name is Alice Joubin from George Washington University in Washington, D.C. I'm honored to be part of the Shakespeare Association of Korea's 60th anniversary conference. Today, I'm going to speak on transgender interpretations of Shakespeare. In 2018, Desdemona Jones' As You Like It employed trans and gender nonconforming actors to thematize queer homelessness and to explore the question of belonging. Rosalind as Ganymede in the production presents as gender fluid. The non-binary actor Janet Lelacheur plays Hamlet. In 2019, in Daniel Windner's production at Iris Theatre in London, genderplay is the name of the game in Shakespeare theatre. But it is serious business to be playful with gender. These performances offer audiences an opportunity to think about place and space. When society deems someone deviant, they are not accepted in particular places and are forced to leave their home space. There are certainly trans and non-binary actors on stage, but are there Shakespeare characters who can be read as trans? The answer is yes. To ask whether there are trans characters is to ask questions about the performance of gender roles. We are asking questions about the articulation of gender in early modern and modern times. Take Twelfth Night, for example, a most happy rag, washed ashore after shipwreck in a foreign land, Illyria. And presuming the death of her twin brother Sebastian, Viola, with the aid of the ship's captain, presents as Cesario to seek employment at the court. Twelfth Night is unique among Shakespearean comedies. It involves a journey of self-discovery in and elsewhere, but it does not depict any sort of returning to the normal world. Cesario's displacement is partially defined by his uneasy relationship with Olivia, who falls in love with him, and with Duke Orsino, with whom he is secretly in love. Other characters' speech acts affirm and undermine in different scenes Cesario's personhood in Illyria. Significantly, after the scene on the beach, Viola disappears from sight, and a dramatic action. Viola's incarnation as Cesario is a form of trans-masculine embodiment. This trans-masculine practice makes his life worth living. The place is energized by Cesario's presence. Traditional criticism tripped up like a problematic misconception of cross-dressing as a convenient and temporary dramatic device has largely overlooked the transgender cues and interpreted Viola as a cisgender cross-dressing character. Beyond conscious self-identified usage, the term cross-dressing is actually a misnomer in most contexts because it overemphasizes the ideas of sartorial camouflage. It assumes stable binaries. It glosses over the performativity of all speech acts and suggests that trans bodies are inauthentic. Performativity permeates all speech acts, permeates our social life and literature because it involves conscious or unconscious uses of language to affect social actions. So cross-dressing as a fiction about compartmentalized binary genders is not an effective tool to analyze a work such as Twelfth Night, because this term is a directorial label that marginalizes some gender practices over others. And these labels, such as male to female or female to male, as Jack Halberstam says, they make about as much sense as calling someone a heterosexual to gay man. So in case you're wondering, is it anachronistic to use modern concepts such as trans, speech act, performativity to analyze early modern plays? Well, the answer is no. Lives under different labels do not invalidate or negate those trans-adjacent experiences. They may have been legible to people in that time within their vocabulary, and now they become illegible because of our compulsion to only look for what we think we already know. Secondly, it is in fact ahistorical to not use an intersectional or open-ended modes of inquiry to examine historical works. Speech acts, for example, encompass conscious or unconscious uses of language in relation to social actions. There are many examples: naming, self-naming, officiation, apologies, consent, invitations, sentencing, complaints. So socially structured speech acts are key components of life. And if we pay attention to the performativity of speech acts, we will be better able to appreciate characters' unspoken motivations beyond superficial plot devices. In interpretations that hinge on cross-dressing as a temporary and temporally abbreviated act of make-believe, Cesario is merely Viola's alter ego and temporary shell for dwelling in Illyria. This type of interpretation forecloses the open-endedness of Shakespeare's texts, in which Cesario tells Duke Orsino that he is, quote, all the daughters of his father's house and all the brothers too, in which Cesario does not change his attire to become Viola in the final scene. There are many trans characters historically, but we fail to see them. We don't acknowledge their presence. There is a cultural tendency to seek false clarity. We may not feel comfortable to embrace uncertainty, but the language of Twelfth Night is suggestive and porous rather than prescriptive. All utterances retain a level of openness because meanings emerge contextually over time. The final scene of Twelfth Night is open-ended, but cisgender assumptions often override the openness in such language and put the play in a closed circuit. In other words, these interpretations actually put the play in a closet. In Shakespeare's text, Cesario does not dress up frivolously for deception, mischief, or amusement, and does not see his true self as temporally demarcated. Cesario's personal truth is revealed by his choice of words and his action of not changing into, quote, maid's garments. Duke Orsino does not misgender Cesario, does not dead name him. He says, Cesario, come, for so you shall be, while you are a man. But when in other habits you are seen, Orsino's mistress and his fancy's queen. So the mystery, of course, is that Cesario does not have any lines after this speech. It should be noted that, of course, trans performance can become overt or tacit over time. Cesario in Twelfth Night indexes transness only in specific scenes. Even the presence of trans bodies in overtly trans productions only represent bodies in a moment in time, similar to other processes such as aging or wearing one's hair long or short. In a future point in time, those bodies may cease to represent the practices they do today. The fact that the Orsino, as you see on the screen here, uses a fluid vocabulary, non-binary vocabulary, is actually enlightening. Societies tend to arbitrarily deem certain somatic and social transformations more natural than others, such as change of body types. And how come change of body type is deemed more natural, acceptable than changing gender practices? The naturalized changes, such as wrinkles, may not always be thought of as positive, but they do not carry with them nearly the same level of stigma as gender transformations do. A trans-inclusive perspective enhances our understanding of Shakespeare's comedies and romance plays, as well as characters who go through various forms of transformation, such as Falstaff as the Witch of Brentford, who escapes Ford's house in The Merry Wives of Windsor, such as Rosalind, who ventures into the woods as Ganymede in As You Like It, and Imogen as the boy Fidel in Cymbeline. Due to early modern presence of the so-called boy actors in As You Like It, we can actually read the characters of Celia, Phoebe, and Audrey through a trans lens, a transgender lens as well. These characters have transformative experiences. They move between demarcated social spaces. They break free of social impositions. As a result of this destabilization of the concept of gender, such roles are inherently non-binary and can be played by trans actors. Shakespearean theater is trans theater, but current legislation in some US states criminalizes trans people and performance. These anti-trans attitudes endanger classical theater. High school drama programs are withering, if not shut down. And theater festivals from Oregon to the Black Friars are all affected. I wanted to spend some time on the notion of performativity, which is distinct from conventional understanding of performance as an artistic form. Performativity permeates all narratives. Performativity refers to how language tacitly or overtly conditions social actions. Characters and readers, they will behave in a certain way, in a particular manner to fit in or decolonize social norms. Socially structured, reciprocal, and reiterative speech acts and nonverbal communication are key components to our cultural life. By drawing attention to embodied performativity, I am challenging anti-corporeality, kind of a distaste for bodily ideas. And I'm challenging the privileging of formally printed text over ephemera, like live performance, film screenings, or publicity photos. In his study of the literary prejudice against film, Robert Stam describes logophilia, giving preeminence to written words over visual signs as class prejudice. In its capacity to both resist and celebrate the artificiality of racial and gender norms, performance is a useful tool to deconstruct naturalized default positions on those social practices. Since the performativity of language enacts both tacit and overt transness, I define trans performance capaciously to include not only testimonial memoirs and works by trans-identified actors or writers that address diverse gender experiences, but also significantly trans-adjacent productions that depict tacit transness, but without characters who explicitly identify as trans. As important as it is to celebrate trans self-representation, there are key benefits to expanding the scope of trans literature through the notion of performativity, one of them being the exposure of the partiality of all gendered positions. And a benefit of attending to a trans performativity theory is that we can begin to see that text alone does not encompass everything words connote, and we can counter a text-centric bias about gender practices. Gender practices are, of course, not fixed. And of course, even printed texts are not fixed. It's a kind of misconception about the fixity of printed text. Now, significantly, utterances should be understood as both a spatial and temporal concept. Gender really comes down to what one does or says in a given space at a given point in time, and how one does it, how one says it. So it's kind of a set of interpersonal relationships. Trans, in this context, is an umbrella term. It's a noun as well as a verb. It's the expression of an action that requires a direct object to complete its sense of meaning. So we can say some characters are trans in gender or trans in history. Now, with this more inclusive trans lens, we can reread the gender encodings in Banquo's and Macbeth's loaded questions to the witches. You should be women, and yet your beards forbid me to interpret that you are so. And they also ask, what are you? We can also think about how some actors simultaneously trans race and transgender at the same time. Belinda Sullivan pulled a doubled drag performance of Falstaff as the Witch of Brentford in the 2013 African-American Shakespeare Company production of Merry Wives of Windsor, which was directed by Becky Kemper. Now, does this kind of double drag performance diminish the impact of what would otherwise seem to be transphobic violence? That's an open-ended question. British Indian actor Shubham Saraf's trans performance of Ophelia against Michelle Carey's cross-cast white Hamlet also traverses gender and racial lines in the so-called post-gender production of Hamlet at the London Globe in 2018. And we can use this trans lens also to parse the transness in Mark Rylance all-male 12th Night at the Globe, as well as Jack Lasky's Rosalind at the London Globe in the 2018 As You Like It. Sawyer Kemp has observed that in some cases, male to female cross-casting is used to downplay sexist violence or behaviors in all male or all female performances, while in other cases, it leads to intended or unintended comedic effects. In contrast, a cisgender actress's cross-casting is sometimes seen by second-wave feminism as liberatory and empowering. So why are such performances similar to cisgender interpretations of Viola in Twelfth Night typically received as pragmatic and temporary gender nonconformity rather than as transgender expressions? It is time that we change our lens. So to return to the question, to trans or not to trans Shakespeare? The answer is yes. Thank you for joining me today in exploring these important questions. Have a wonderful day.